All right, we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Thank you guys all so much for stopping by. We're talking about is the Pokemon market at its breaking point. We've obviously talked about in some of our previous videos about looking at what level of the motion are we on when it comes to the market psychology? Do we think that the market is close to its end? Is there a fatigue that is starting to truly kick in? But before we jump into it, as always, make sure you leave a like, comment down below, subscribe, really helps the YouTube channel. And then, of course, if you want to check out Alex's content, link is down in the description below. And then if you want to be a part of the Pokemon or Pokemart wholesale community, well, if we get a spot open up, make sure to check the Discord. Links also down in the description below for that. But you ready, Alex?
Well, let's do it, man.
All right. So I'll start us off then, just because I feel like this is something that Alex and I, we were talking about this a little bit before stream. The Pokemon market's at an interesting space right now, right? We're kind of what I would almost describe as like Pokemon purgatory. And what I mean by this is you can look at this in two ways. You can either look at this from a psychological perspective, or you can kind of almost look at it from like the overall just macroeconomics as a whole of the space, right? Because obviously Destined Rivals was the most anticipated hype set, and it's been selling really well, right? I mean, I know, Alex, you said you sold a record amount of product just because of Destined, and I obviously had a record day in our store because of it. So Destined, super hot, super great, right? And we obviously have the upcoming set with the black and white, and people are getting hyped up about that. I mean, pre-sales look relatively good, but ultimately, kind of past the point of that, it definitely feels like, especially as we're going into the summer, which is historically known to be a lot slower of a time, the fatigue is really starting to kind of kick into the space. And I know we looked at it on last stream, and I can probably pull it up, and you kind of used it a little bit in the thumbnail, but the psychology of the market, it plays such a huge factor when it comes to the true macroeconomic health of the hobby. And I feel like it's something that's definitely worth discussing today, because ultimately, I mean, just what's next,
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just it's one of these things where it just seems like, at least from an online like content and people who like, I guess, like interact online with Discords, content, Reddit, all those places, it just seems like everyone moves as like a blob these days. Like, it's just like, everyone's on the new set, and everyone's on this like next release. Everyone's on this new news. Everybody's on this new thing that people are, piping up. Everybody's, positive one day. Now everyone's negative the next. And it's just like, there's so little, I would call like nuance left. There's so little like, almost like people that are, I know there's a lot of like individual opinions out there, but it's almost like people are almost afraid to share their opinions and fear of getting like, bombarded online or hated on, because, and I get it, because like a lot of people don't want to create a channel, like me or you have, or, even like put their positions out there in a Discord or a comment section, because they're going to get, dogpiled on for saying something that's out of like the accepted norm. Right. And, it's just like saying anything like negative about the market 3 months ago was like, you would get crushed. Like, I came out and made like a couple videos where I just wasn't as enthused about a couple items, right? Like PCETBs was one of them. And then I forget what like another item was. And I got like bombarded for it. Well, now we're like in the exact opposite arena. Whereas like, if you say anything positive now, you're shilling, you're creating FOMO. And it's just such a weird, the hobby was never like this. Even in 2021, 2022, it wasn't this bad. It's become so polarized at this point that it's hard to like have a different opinion than like, I guess, what like the mob or the big group of all people think online.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I actually saw a video the other day that I thought was quite interesting, kind of plays into the point that you're mentioning. Someone was being asked, basically, it was weird because it said it was their hot take, but it wasn't really even a hot take. But he was basically saying how like people in the hobby complain too much. And he was just breaking down how kind of the hobby has devolved more and more about how like there's always a reason for people to be upset about stuff. And then, of course, kind of also elaborating more on that, talking about scalpers and how they've kind of ruined the hobby as a whole, and how there's so many individuals that it feels like are in this space, but aren't in this space because of like truly being passionate about Pokemon. And people are just always finding reasons to like kind of add misery into the mix of things. So it's very difficult to kind of see where like the true sentiment really is, because you've got obviously hardcore fans of Pokemon. And it's weird to think about where we're at a point now where the hardcore fans' biggest criticisms are other fans. You know what I mean?
Well, and just like, yeah, I know we don't take questions till later, but like, I mean, I'll just go ahead and respond to the Just Humble in chat. Like, you know, this is such a normalized thing right now. Is one of the things I'm talking about. It says if ultra modern product prices drop and get close to MSRP, how will older seal products react? Will they remain stagnant, drop slightly, or just do their own thing? It's like everyone is just under this impression that everything is going to MSRP, like the MSRP-ness gang, right? And it's just like, when has that ever happened in the history of the hobby? Never. Like other products that do not get reprinted do not drop in like relation to what a product. It's like people think, oh, well, if Surging Sparks gets a reprint and then Prismatic Evolutions gets a reprint, that means Paldea Evolve will drop. It's like, when has that ever been a thing? Like you had every set in the entire, Sword and Shield era at the time, other than a few. You had Fusion, Chilling, Battle Styles, Shining Fates, Vivid Voltage ETBs, Darkness Ablaze ETBs. Everything was reprinted at once. Guess what? Rebel Clash did nothing. Sword and Shield base did nothing. Sun and Moon era did nothing. And we're supposed to believe, and people like want to believe that like, oh, well, if they reprint a couple of these sets, everything, the dominoes are going to fall. It's like, what data are you going off of? What some idiots say online? It's weird.
Yeah, well, Rudy talked about it in one of his more recent videos when he was talking about people getting crushed and just the overall space as a whole. There's just, I don't know. And I see this on a day-to-day basis, right? Like talking about it from the shop. There's so many individuals that have such a like skewed conception of how the hobby works. I mean, I remember on the week of release for Prismatic, I had someone that came into the shop and they were like, I'm going to wait till the prices drop down to MSRP. And I'm like, how long have you been in the hobby for? And they're like 3 months. And I'm just like, listen, you could be right. I could be wrong, but like, it's a gamble that I feel like is extremely unlikely. But also when you haven't been in this space, because there's so many new individuals, it's really tough. And so I'm gonna show just so that we can also bring this up.
Well, and before you bring it up, it also produces like a lot of anger, right? And I know people like I see in the comments already too, like complaining about the haters. It's not complaining; it's just trying to it's trying to push people in the right direction. Because here's the thing, guys: it's like Prismatic Evolutions, you're already seeing people upset, right? Because and I even try to tell everyone, I said, guys, this is not going to MSRP with this reprint, and I got a lot of heat for it. Everyone's like, oh, you see all the Costco bundles? Did you see all this, all that? And it's stabilizing in like over $100 in ETB. And now people are changing from saying it's going to go back to MSRP to now being angry. Like, well, it's only because of all the scalpers and evil investors that are keeping the price up. It's your guys' fault. It's like, no, guys, we're just trying to educate you on how these markets work. An ETB at $150 is not returning to $60 based on one drop. I don't know, man. I try to help, but no one wants to help. I don't know what to
to clarify as well, Just Humble said Alex, I meant upcoming sets as well.
And yeah, I agree with that. We will get a point here soon where upcoming sets do get released at MSRP or lower for sure.
Right. And we'll talk about it here. Obviously, now that I've got the chart pulled up, this is something we've obviously been talking about. Question is, where are we? Right. Are we in the euphoria stage or are we in the complacency? I think those are the two you kind of have to ask yourself the question on, right? When it comes to the overall strength of the hobby as a whole, we could obviously be starting to get to a point where we're kind of in this in between. It's really tough to know for certain, but it definitely feels like we're getting to a point where this market is going to top out just based on the emotional fatigue that we're kind of seeing within the market. But more than that, I would say that the overall hype as a whole with the hobby itself, I mean, like, don't get me wrong here. The mega era is probably going to be fine. Like, it's probably going to do well as a whole, but I don't think we're going to see a set that's going to be introduced that is going to necessarily make it to where everyone is going to lose their minds and like say, okay, this is the next destined rivals that everyone is going to be waiting for, you know? And I could be wrong. Like, I don't know how deep this, mega era is going to go. That's another thing we also are super hypothetically speaking on, because the 30th anniversary is obviously going to come out next year. And so who knows, the megas could obviously be a part of that. And that could be, one thing that's going to keep people sticking around. But I guess it's really difficult to necessarily say, because there's so many other relevant factors that you have to take into consideration, because we've seen strong sets perform weak during the kind of fatigue of the market. But also at the same exact time, like, we just got information about the sales that have been coming from the Switch 2 and how obviously they're breaking records. And they sold, like, I think it was the PlayStation 4 was the one that held the previous record of like the most amount of sales in like a 3-week period. If I'm correct, like the Switch 2 broke that period in like 3 days. So I don't know. It's like, you like to look at the emotional sentiment and you say to yourself, like, okay, people are starting to get fatigued. And we're going into the summer, which is usually kind of like a slower period. And Destin has kind of made its passing point. So it's not one of these things where people are getting hyped up in the same way as people are for the Switch 2, and they're just, not wanting to pay the prices. It's now a matter of, okay, what are people now willing to pay the prices for? Are these sets really worth it for the price point that obviously it's being pre-sold for? Because if I'm correct, I think they just recently listed the product on TCG Player for the black and white set. And I think it was pre-selling for 140, if I'm correct. I'll have to try and, yeah. So it looks like Black Bolt's going for around 135, 140, and same with white. So, I mean, we're super early into the pre-sales, so who knows how much that's going to stay at it, especially considering the set comes out in a month. But I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm right there with you, dude. It's here's the other thing too. It's just like, I've been selling, different products on my streams, as we talked about. Like, I've been selling, Final Fantasy collector boxes, guys. In 1 week now, I started selling them, I believe last Monday. We've already went through 3 full collector boxes. Those are $80 a pack. We're selling them at $80 a pack. And people in Pokemon are complaining that they can't get $5 packs. They got to pay 10 now or 8 now. And it's just like, we sold the Japanese deluxe, right? The Japanese deluxe boxes. They have 4 packs inside. The packs go for $30 to $35. Those are selling. So people are willing to pay $30 to $35 for a Japanese pack because, well, they have a better chance of getting hits or God packs or whatever. So that tells me it's not the price point. It's just people are willing to pay certain amount for certain value. And that's what people just don't understand. Prismatic Evolution's costing what it does. Guys, there is a $1,000 plus card in there raw. There are multiple $100 hits in there raw, more in PSA 10s. Why do you think people are willing to pay $10 plus a pack for that? It's not an SV base set where the top hit's a Gardevoir or a Miriam that's worth 30 or 40 bucks. And so I think people just like get caught up in the price point and they don't look at the value.
Well, you also have to think too that Prismatic Evolution, and I don't know why people like to brush this over. It's the first set we've gotten in English that has a God pack.
Yep.
Like, I understand we had a demigod pack in 151, but a God pack is worth so much money. Like, we're talking about, okay, you can pull one of every evolution. That pack right there is going to be worth $3,000 to $4,000. Like, there's no equivalent to that in Pokemon. Like, think about it. In the past 5 years, when has there been a set that's had a Pokemon that you can pull raw that's going to be worth $4,000? Like, just on a new set release. And that's just obviously not the case. So having the opportunity to do something like that with Demigod, that's a huge deal, right? And I mean, that's another thing you have to take into consideration when we're talking about the hobby space as a whole and comparing it to others. There's been a big thing with serialized, as we're all aware, with Magic. And so that's something that's extremely prevalent. We've had multiple people, like I've discussed, pull serialized cards in our shop, and their cards have been valued anywhere between, $1,000 to $5,000. So that's something that's very normal in that space. It's really difficult to pull. Same with obviously God packs. So there is an emphasis there that I feel like people are not kind of taking into consideration on how much value that's going to add when it comes to people wanting to chase what they're going to open.
Absolutely, dude. Hey, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen too. Like, so if you want to take that down.
Yeah, of course.
Let's see if I can. Okay. So this is one thing I want to illustrate, guys. I talk about this a lot in videos, but I know a lot of people like to see the graphics. So a lot of people want to compare, like, new sets getting reprints. Like, well, if these get reprints, the dominoes are going to fall. Everything's going to go back to MSRP. Okay. So here's Shining Fates. All right. This is when it got reprinted down in the 30s and $40s in ETBs. Check the dates here, guys. This is back in like May, let's say anywhere between January to September of 2022. Okay. Chilling Reign, same way, right? This is when it dropped down in the 70s and 80s a box. Look, same thing. May, September 2022. Okay. Pay attention to those dates, guys. Here's Cosmic Eclipse. Can you show me where it dropped? Where did it drop? Where did it drop because those got reprinted? Can we look at Unified Minds? Where did it drop? All through May, September 2022. Let's go ahead and look at Fates Collide. XY Fates Collide. Can you show me the dip? Let's look at let's go look at Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield base in the same era. Where's the big dip? Where's the big dip all throughout? Oh, this one doesn't go all the way back. Dang, it doesn't show it. But the point of the matter is, guys, like, none of these other boxes or sets have dips because another set got reprinted. And I think that's the biggest lie being perpetrated throughout the hobby right now, is like, once Pokemon catches up and reprints some of these new sets, everything's going down, the whole ship's sinking. And it's just like, based on what random people online say with no data and probably very little experience in the hobby, because if they had experience in the hobby, they would know that's complete nonsense.
Yeah. It's interesting where it's a unique situation where it's the inverse is true, where if a product itself obviously doesn't get reprinted, or sorry, if a product itself gets reprinted, then obviously that doesn't mean that everything else that's a part of the era is going to drop. But if an item like Fusion Strike booster boxes starts to pop off, then all of a sudden people start to FOMO into the next best thing because they see it as a potential investing opportunity. But that just ultimately comes down to the effects of demand and less there of supply.
Which comes to another point. A lot of Sword and Shield boxes that ran up are giving some of those gains back. And so again, it creates another like kind of pinpoint of negativity people can throw on it and be like, another sign the market is crashing, or a sign that a lot of these boxes just went up anywhere from 70 to 100%. And so whenever things have massive run-ups like that, parabolic moves, they always overshoot. They correct back, whatever it may be, 5, 10, 15%. They find an equilibrium. They find a bottom. They usually stagnate there for a while, where people kind of are comfortable. Buyers and sellers agree, and they kind of trade in that range. And then they'll go on another run later. And again, it's just like anyone can pinpoint little segments of data on charts and make it fit their, narrative. But the reality is, whenever you just zoom out a little bit, you zoom out, all those little things people are worried about get a whole lot smaller. And when you look at, anything people are saying about the market, just look back in history, go do all the data's out there. I don't have like a special site that I can go to. You can go look it up for yourself, and you'll find out very quickly that maybe Alex and Eli, whoever else, like talking positively about things, maybe they're not just shilling and they're not creating FOMO. They're just letting you know their experience on what has happened before and likely will happen again.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're just looking at the market as a whole, I mean, so we have been talking about Journey and Destined the most, right? Especially as indicators when it comes to the strength of the hobby. Right now, Journey is still sitting 206 right now. It's been kind of in this weird fluctuation period where it's been going from 200 to like 215, I'd want to say, right? And Destined Rivals is sitting around 255 currently. So, and it's been in this kind of range of around 250 to 260. So if you want to really look at the indications of the market and how things are going to be for, Scarlet and Violet new sets, those are the two you want to look at as of right now, especially because Destined is a significantly better set when you compare it to Journey together. And once you start to see an adjustment on Destined and it gets closer to Journey's price, anticipate Journey is also going to dip with that, because obviously the downwards pressure of Destined Rivals being a set that people are going to want to pick up more than Journey is going to be something that makes sense in that general instance, especially since Journey is a set that is still in rotation and is also likely to get reprinted itself, right? It's not going to be the same in terms of a corollary effect like you would see with something like a Paldea Evolved, right? Paldea is not going to do anything if Destined starts to get any sort of reprint or any sort of, more specifically, weakness, I should say, in the market. But I mean, outside of that, if you're just looking at kind of like what we discussed last week with the Prismatic Evolution ETBs, it's still roughly around the same price. I mean, we obviously still have product that's going to Costco's, and that's going to continue to keep the price pressure down, but we don't really know how much it's going to affect things. Prismatic Evolution's super premium collection, I will say it's at a point now where it's officially under $200. So it does look like there was a good amount of that obviously added some downward pressure, but also you still have to think this is still significantly above MSRP, right? So even then, this isn't an item that it's like at a price point like what we saw with the Charizard Ultra Premium collection, where it was selling at wholesale, right? So, I'm looking at the market as a whole and I'm saying, yes, there's some like signs of weakness in certain areas, but more specifically, it just is coming down to some of the supply being added that's playing that effect. And more than anything, it's just kind of like sideways action, and the market is definitely just kind of popping off with what's popular in terms of its demand, and the demand is staying where it needs to stay for sets to sell. But it's not like anything is really on a huge rise as far as I can tell, or a huge decline that's based solely off of demand.
Yeah, and like another thing, like I wish we could like clip this part when I say this, because this needs to get shared like to everyone in the hobby right now. Is I'm gonna bust everyone's bubble right now with the whole like printed into the ground mentality. The average sets, even up to some of the highest, most reprinted sets, they get like an average of 1 to 3 reprints. They get an average of 1 to 3 reprints. And so we've already went through one of Prismatic. Likely, it probably only has another 1 or 2 more. And usually each reprint gets smaller. And so this mentality that like anyone, talking positively about a product is shilling, and like, oh, they're just going to turn the printers on forever. It goes into the ground. Again, you're speaking on things that have never happened. I mean, I'm sure you could find a set here or there. Evolutions was printed more, Hidden Fates, but like the majority of all sets, they don't get reprinted more than that. That's the data. Like, Eli, help me out here. I don't know what people are asking for.
Yeah, I mean, the only sets historically that you'll see get a decent amount of reprints are specialty sets, and that's kind of it, right? Like, obviously, Shining Fates got printed pretty heavily into the ground as a specialty set. We saw a lot of reprints when it came to Crown Zenith. 151 is one where we've seen a decent amount of reprints for it so far. I mean, you had a reprint for the ETBs and the Ultra Premium collections, and then the product of Blooming Waters, which we're now seeing multiple other waves come out for. So Pokemon is trying with specialties, but if we're taking those out of consideration and we're just talking standard booster boxes, it's very rarely you see 3, let alone 2.
I would say Evolutions is the last one I can remember.
Yeah, like, it's not that. I mean, if you literally think about, let's just go back to Sword and Shield era. You had one major reprint with Lost Origin Silver Tempest, right? You had one reprint, wasn't even that major, but one reprint of Brilliant Stars and Astral Radiance. I guess you could say there was like a tiny, tiny, tiny restock that came after at some point, but it was like a fifth of the size of what was already a small reprint that we had the first time around. And it barely did anything to the prices. I mean, I remember I was talking with Alex about it because Lost Origin itself, right? There was some more supply, and Alex was like, how do you think this is going to affect prices? And Lost Origin at the time was $200 a box. And I think I said 170 best case scenario is the floor, but I'd say it's probably going to hit 180 and then rebound. It went to 180 and then it literally rebounded to 220, 240 within like a month or two. So it ended up clearing its record at the time. So like stuff like that, where Pokemon will have like one larger or medium size reprint, right? But then after that, they'll have like tiny reprints that'll come thereafter just to get a little bit of like slowing pressure to the upside. But other than those like 2 that you're typically going to get, like it's very, very rare that you're going to get 3. So we saw this with Evolving. Evolving's another good one. During October, November time, we had a massive reprint for Evolving. Prices were in the low 100s for a couple months. Like you could literally pick up boxes pretty easily at 105, 110. And then we obviously in August of 2022 got that follow-up reprint that was significantly smaller, drop prices, but obviously not as low and for not as long because there was so much less. So I would say there's definitely a corollary pattern from what we're seeing, where Pokemon usually has one big reprint and then they follow it up with a significantly smaller one. And then from there, it's pretty often that that's kind of it.
And what's funny, this should be like in politics, like a nonpartisan issue. Like this should be straight down the center. Like everyone, guys, we're giving you unbiased just information. Like this is just the way it is. This is the past data on what Pokemon prints and what distributors distribute out. Like there's neither one of us, if you haven't noticed, have told you to buy or sell, to you know, shill, FOMO, anything. We're just telling you the information. How you deal with that information, that's all on you. But it's just like to pretend this isn't the real information and to like, you know, make videos acting like something different's going to happen. It's kind of wacky. It's kind of wacky.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at 151, right? I talked about it. You know, it's tough. You're looking at Blooming Waters and you're saying to yourself, okay, the Blooming Waters, if we're just looking on a 3-month chart, they were going for 140 and now it's closer to like 120. It's dropped like 15%. You know, it's fine. It's not great, but it's a dip, right? And Pokemon's obviously going to try and address and get more Blooming Waters out there. And we'll see if they're going to try and do what they did with the Sea and Sky boxes, where they just pump the crap out of that for Crown Zenith. Who knows? That's totally possible. But also, we talked about it, you know, previously. If you just go and compare it to some of the specialty sets and how they've been performing, you know, previously, and then also talk about the price per pack on Blooming Waters, compared it to the ETBs, which I understand ETBs are always going to hold a significant premium, but the spread just feels so big to where there's still some value there, where you can easily say from a long-term perspective, it's going to be worthwhile picking up some of these packs because you know that the set as a whole is going to perform extremely well. And the expectation is obviously that if you can come in and get these packs for significantly lower than what you would if you're paying the premium on the ETB, eventually there is going to be kind of a catch-up point for these loose packs. They're going to make it to where it's going to make much more sense in terms of the value that it's going to hold in the future. Like, and it's an item that you kind of want to have a piece of. Same thing obviously goes with Prismatic here. And that's more specifically with the ETB prices. And that's one of the reasons why I honestly would say I like the Prismatic case more, because if I'm going the route of picking, like, what do I want to invest from the two of these things, for me, the Blooming Waters, aka the loose packs, make more sense than the ETBs just because of the spread. But if you look at Prismatic Evolution as a whole, if you're saying to yourselves, you can probably go secondary market, get them for like 90, 95 in ETB just because of where they are right now, where you can go buy them for 105 on TCG Player. And then you compare that to what the loose packs are selling for Prismatic Evolution, which I'm actually going to pull that up right now. Give me 2 seconds just so I can pull that up. So the loose packs are selling for around $11. You're getting the same amount of value as you would when it comes to picking up Prismatic packs. And by value, I mean the price per pack, as you are the ETB. So you might as well go pick up the ETB because it's going to be such a better hold comparatively. So take advantage of the 151 loose pack spread between the ETB sealed, and then take advantage of that same spread between the ETB and the loose packs of Prismatic. That's kind of what I'm looking at when I'm looking at these specialty sets right now.
No, I agree, man. I mean, and you know, I'm actually, I mean, I don't know if you're looking at Prismatic right now, like, guys, Prismatic, there's literally a 0% feedback seller with 6 sales that has it at 97 plus 11 shipping. There's a 0% feedback with 1 sale at 99 plus 10 shipping. And then the first, like, legitimate seller, I mean, 100% with 249 sales, $110, 103, 109.33. It's right back to 110. I mean, it's right back to 110 already when everyone thought like the Costco drop was some, you know, Armageddon. And it's just, I don't know, man. Like, here's the thing, right? The issue is, and somebody mentioned in the chat, how most people won't be here in 6 months or a year. The issue, the sad part is, you know, the people that get led down the wrong road, they're going to be the ones that, you know, they'll leave the hobby in 6 months, a year. They'll come back in 2 or 3 years, and they'll be the ones that are angry at everybody who owns a lot of this stuff in 3-4 years. And it's all really expensive, and they're going to be mad and call everyone, you know, scalpers, evil investors. And it's just like, well, you had the chance right now. You just kind of fell down that rabbit hole of, everything's a ripoff, only buy at MSRP, all that nonsense. The more important, like a better question, like, guys, I'm not one of these people who's just like, never says a negative thing, thinks there's no debates to be had. I think there's really very real debates. It's just all the nonsense you hear on YouTube is nonsensical. It's irrelevant. But like real debates we could talk about, me and Eli could talk about. One is a lot of people are always worried about, are there too many people investing and putting sealed product away? And will that affect, appreciation in the future? Another real one is, hey, is buying into these booster boxes at 200, the DTBs at 100, is that going to affect the, annual returns? And is it actually going to still beat, things like an S&P or a mutual fund, especially taking in the storage and risks and shipping and all the selling fees at the end and all that stuff. And it's just like, those are very real conversations that I think, you definitely have to have at every individual price point and things like that. But like all this other nonsense, like the reprints and all this, it's really meaningless, guys. It's the way the market's always operated. It's going to remain to operate the same exact way. But I'd be willing to get your thoughts on that, Eli. Like, what do you think about everyone, getting, it's always happened every step of the way. It happened when XY ended, it happened in Sword and Shield after the pandemic and Logan Paul. And everyone's always worried, is there too many investors now? And is that going to affect things in the future?
No, I don't think at all. I don't think so at all, because, and here's my rationale for this. What is the current price of most first edition jungle and fossil boxes, and how more often do you see jungle and fossil product compared to, let's say, sun and moon era product? When you just,
it is crazy.
So I guess my thing is that people talk about this and they say like, oh, everyone's investing in stuff more than ever. But yet I always feel like I'm constantly finding vintage product significantly more than I am, some of the more modern products, like in the XY era, in the sun and moon era.
I would say vintage, not mid era, is definitely really scarce too.
Yeah, super. I mean, dude, like, yeah, I would say this.
Yeah, like jungle fossil, it seems like they're always available.
Yeah, like I would say the two scarcest eras, in my opinion, is it's the Diamond Pearl era, and then it is the EX era. I think those are by far the two scarcest. I mean, if you look at just the values on a lot of these Gold Star boxes, I mean, they're really expensive and they're really hard to come by, right? And the premiums are insane. So, whereas if you look at a lot of these older products, they're so much more prevalent, right? And so that obviously means that there's a lot more available and or a lot more just of people holding and sitting on them. So for people to say like, oh my God, this is a prevalent issue, like now everyone is starting to invest in Pokemon. It's like, no, dude, like this is a thing that's been going on since the inception. It's just now becoming more mainstream. And so people are now, of course, more aware of it. But ultimately, it's not like things are going to drastically change, because as with most market cycles, usually you're going to have a lot of casual individuals that are not going to know what's going on. And the casual individuals that are going to invest because they heard there's money in it are going to panic sell out of the market because they don't know why they're in there to begin with, past the point of making money. I mean, that's literally,
people do you think actually still hold their boxes after just 3 years?
Yeah, let alone like 6 months. I mean, heck, man, I knew people that literally were in the crypto space and they got in crypto back in like 2017 when the prices got up to 20K. They went and bought at like 17K because it dipped, and they were like, wow, this is such a great deal. Like it's 3,000 off. And then the price, of course, adjusted down to 3K, which they sold, I think, at like 12K and ended up losing a ton of money and were like super weak on it because they were like, oh, I just thought there was money to be made, so I got in. And then, of course, if they ended up holding, they would have made significantly more now that it's 100K, right? Like there's a lot of individuals that just are kind of in the space because they see there's money to be made, but they don't really understand the hobby as a whole or the space as a whole, and they're just wanting to make a quick buck. I mean, I think it was someone in the stream that mentioned it, or I can't remember if you mentioned it, Alex, but someone went into like a GameStop and was basically just panic buying battle academies without recognizing that there's not even packs in battle academies. And it was because they were just trying to buy whatever they could to flip, or people will literally come and ask you questions after they bought an investment. When is a good time to sell? Because they're already ready to get out of their position because they just want to make their money now. So it's something where I don't think it's going to be an issue, because as with most hyperbolic markets, you're going to have people that are going to come in because there's going to be easy money to be made, and then they're going to leave and get burnt because they realize that they are getting into investments that they don't understand, and it's going to cause them to want to get out of the space in an emotional manner, because they're not going to obviously be willing to be patient enough to hold on to a product that they don't really care about.
I mean, dude, it's all comes down to, I think people I think that's why it's easier when you're in the hobby longer. Like, I've seen this 3 times, guys. And I think that's what it comes down to is this is like new to a lot of people. I remember arguing with people on online forums back in the day before like Discord was really taken off. Like online, I'm not going to mention them, but like where I would argue with people about evolutions. And everyone was just like, oh no, they printed that umpteenth times. It's overprinted. Plus the cat's out of the bag now. Everyone knows about investing in Pokemon. SM Pratt's got a YouTube channel. Rudy's got a YouTube channel. Like back in 2017, when Sun and Moon, everyone's like, oh, they're printing way more now in Sun and Moon. They did in XY after evolutions and everything popped off. They overprinted that. Now they're overprinting this. It's not going to be much a thing anymore. And then all that proved not be true. And then we got to Sword and Shield era and Logan Paul, pandemic, all that. And then after that, that's when I started my YouTube channel. Everyone was saying modern Pokemon wasn't investable. Everyone was saying that it was all overprinted. Everyone knows about it now. Because everyone knows about it, it won't work and all this stuff. And now you're seeing all the Sword and Shield stuff go to the moon. And so this is now my 3rd time experience this in the hobby since I've been in it, of people saying the same exact stuff. Well, everyone's doing it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, first of all, 99% of the people you hear online saying they're doing something are lying. They're not doing it. The other 1% that are doing it, they're probably not doing it as big as they say they're doing it. And then like the 0.1% of people actually do and put their money where their mouth is and do what they say they're doing at the numbers they say they're doing it. And of those people, even fewer of them that are actually doing it, not lying, actually hold past that 3 to 5 year period. They'll double their money and get out and move to something else. They'll triple their money, whatever it is. Most people, I would guess, do not own their products after 3 to 5 years. I'm just putting it out. I guarantee you in another couple years, a lot of people were shooken out when Evolving Skies got to 400. Even more got shook out when he got to 800. A bunch more got shaken out when he got to 15, and more are shaken out. Every time a thing moves, more and more people sell out. And guess what? Just like life, you know where the money goes? It flows to the top. It flows to all the people who don't need to sell, who put the things away, hold it long term. They don't need the income. They don't need the quick cash. And eventually only the whales own the product, and then they set the market price. They don't need to give deals. They don't need to blow it out. And it's the same way in life. It's just like in life, like, you know, how people will talk about if you reset everything to 0 and everyone started out equal, you would have certain people that work harder, that they'll take risks, they'll use their money wisely, use their resources wisely, and they'll rise to the top. The money will eventually flow up. It'll take multiple generations, but it's just how things goes, guys. The money always is going to flow to the top because the emotional people are always going to get weeded out by the non-emotional people who operate based on data alone. And that's just how this stuff works.
I think a big thing also that we have to like really take into consideration is how technology has changed things. Because I would say more than anything, like YouTube came out in what? Was it 07, 08? I think is when YouTube came out, right?
You got me.
Yeah, I got you. Here, I'll double check. When did YouTube
sounds good
to post their first video? Let's take a look. Video. So the first ever YouTube video, it was 2005. So the first ever video that was posted on YouTube was in 2005, right? So YouTube as a whole didn't really start to pick up until like 2010, 2011. And before I get to my point, I want to make sure I remind everyone, we're going to go into the question section relatively soon here. So if you have a question, make sure to leave it in bold, saying question followed by what your question is. And of course, leave a like, comment down below, subscribe, really helps the YouTube channel. But yeah, going back to the point that I was making, social media as a whole wasn't really prevalent, I want to say, until around 2014, 2013. Like obviously Twitter was just starting to become a thing in around 2011, 2012, and YouTube didn't really start to kind of become popular. I mean, if you look at where it is now, like I remember growing up as a kid and like watching Smosh, and like Smosh was a big deal because they had like 20 million subscribers, and like, oh my God, that's insane, 20 million subscribers. Mr. Beast is at over 300 million. Like that's literally what, 12, 15 times the amount of what the previous record is. And so social media back then wasn't where it is now. And so because of that, you kind of have to take into consideration how much things have shifted when it comes to the information that people have access to nowadays, especially taking it even a step further with artificial intelligence and, you know, Chat GPT.
Well, and then smartphones and the time when eventually, you know, data didn't cost so much money and all that. And so like you could literally have a phone and watch things all day long like people do now. It's just the all immersive 24/7, you know, ish of like content and stuff. I think that is a huge factor on why this stuff continues to be so popular.
Yeah, so I guess my thing is like when I look at like technology as a whole and I look at like social media, right? Most of it became extremely prevalent in like the late to early 2010s, or sorry, the late like 2009, 2010, like 11. Like that was kind of when it became popular, right? And since then it's obviously been drastic in comparison, right? And so now we have to look at it and we have to look back and say, okay, we obviously have so much more information. And I would argue more importantly is we now have the history, right? Because with YouTube obviously coming out in 2005 and there not being like a huge presence until like 2008, 2009, that was starting to finally come in like 3-4 years after it started to become more of like my generation's like form of social media. What did we have to look on, right? Like some like funny YouTube videos that people were posting. It's like, no, right now we can now look 10, 15 plus years back and say, okay, we've now got a record or a database of information because of what people have historically posted on these social media platforms. Like everyone has to think YouTube is 20 years old. Like that's not that long. So having not had any history versus comparing it now, I think it's important to understand this. And more than anything, if you look at some of like these people in the space and how they got popular, and more specifically, like what we can do to kind of fact check a lot of people, Rudy became popular not because of his content that he posted during the pandemic. Rudy became popular because his older videos of him throwing stuff into his bathroom that no one was watching back in like 2015, 2016 started popping up and going trending because everyone saw the prices of those products, which were duds when he first invested in them, start to skyrocket in value. And then everyone was like, oh my God, this guy who thought everything he invested in was worth nothing is now probably up 4, 5, 6, 10x on some of these investments because he literally just said, I'm throwing it in the bathroom. And that's what caused him to pick up. It was the history of his channel as a whole. So that's something I feel like more individuals need to kind of understand when we look at the market as a whole and kind of how market cycles have been working, because there's just not a lot of information. And I'm just talking about social media. Pokemon is coming up on its 30 years. So we're still in very much uncharted territory with a lot of, general assumptions people are making about such a, new market.
Yeah, man, it's that, and then it's just this idea that I don't know. It's this idea that like people will use past data to predict pretty much everything in life, but we'll use that as like an excuse when it comes to Pokemon, every step of the way, right? Like, I can't think of a thing in life where past data is not used. I mean, when you sign up for a 401k at a company, what do? They give you a sheet. And what do? Do you go down and look at what stocks are in every one of the funds? Nope. You look at how the funds perform over the last 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, lifetime. And you say, okay, that looks like a good track record. It's been around a long time, right? And a lot of people will sign up for funds that have been around 10 years. Pokemon Modern's been around 10 years since everything's been popping, right? The whole hobby's been around almost 30 now. Still not enough track record. It's just like, what's enough? Like, will it be enough in another 10 years, 50 years? Like, when is there enough track record where you can say, okay, yeah, this is, a stable asset to hold,
Yeah. That's the thing, man, is right now in this market, you've got a lot of people that are basically saying, like, because of where things are right now in the investment space, it must be different. But I would argue that the only thing that's truly changed is the influence of technology and social media, and then the amount of product that's being printed based off of the scale of demand. Like, I think other than that, humans are still acting the exact same way. People were investing in Pokemon products much more speculatively back then, which is one of the reasons why we see so much of WotC era products still around compared to some of the more newer product. And by newer, I mean, like, mid era stuff. And then, of course, population reports have since then gone up, but that's predominantly just because there's now more product that's being printed than ever. But outside of that, like, nothing has changed from a psychological perspective in how humans are obviously going to make their judgment on things. People are still going to act the same way, as history does tend to repeat itself, right? You just now have other factors that are going to be taken into consideration, like Logan Paul effect and, breaker streams, and obviously, social media like Twitter, YouTube, and other things that are going to, take content to the next level when it comes to making Pokemon a cultural phenomenon.
Well, here's another funny thing. Does anyone, do you know how long it takes for a company to be added to the S&P index, to be like possible for it to be added? 1 year. You need to be a publicly traded company for 1 year to be added to the S&P index if you qualify as one of the top 500 companies. Therefore, just hear me out. If a bunch of new like AI companies or something all just start taking off, you could literally have the S&P index get filled up with a bunch of companies that are 1 to 5 years old, literally less track record than Pokemon product. But it's all stable, right? You could have a brand new neighborhood of houses built in a brand new town that's up and coming. No one knows how it's going to do, where the demand is going to be, if there's going to be enough infrastructure to keep it, people wanting to live there. And people will say, well, it's real estate though. It's just like, dude, there's many areas that have collapsed because they didn't make it. But again, people will say, oh, it's real estate. It's way more trusted. It's just like, people have such a warped view of like trusting value in things when they just don't know. I don't think people just do enough research of what they're truly investing in. They just like hear, what the majority of people out there say, and they go, oh, it must be trusted. Someone else said it was. It's like, well, why? Do you even know what it's consists of? Like, why is that investment trusted over another investment? Do you know? No, I just heard someone else say it was.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people look at homes and they say, like, it's worth investing in because everyone's always going to need somewhere to live. But like, also at the same time, the amount, like, each investment has their own kind of risks that come with it, right? Like Pokemon, you're obviously betting on the strength of the IP itself and the popularity of it, which right now it's obviously the strongest IP, period. Like number one most valuable IP. So it's a pretty good bet in terms of its overall strength long term. Housing
funny
market,
because if all those other IPs made it, some of those are what, 30, 50, 70 plus years old. The strongest one's not going to make it at least 30, 50, 70 plus years old. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, literally. I'm actually curious
Now,
what
if
it's
we
worth
want
right
to play
now.
some crazy distant future, like what about in 100 years? I'll be dead. I really don't care.
Yeah, right. I'm curious.
50 years is good for me.
Yeah, seriously. I'm curious to see if there's a history for 2025. I'll try and pull it up later, but just to see what the IP valuation is of everything comparably. But going back to it, right? Like, the bet obviously people are making is that everyone's going to need a home, which is, it's a safe bet you're making. I feel like the other thing you have to take into consideration with both these things is Pokemon. Obviously, you need storage, right? There's security that obviously has to be taken into it because it is a physical product, and that's going to come at a cost. But also when it comes to a home can become outdated, right? Its value will of course go up because the value of, what it costs to build, the value of the land, like inflation is going to factor things in. But you're also going to have some form of costs that are going to be poured into the home, right? AC units replaced, there's going to have to be some form of updates when it comes to the bathroom, the bedroom, the flooring, like, general just wear and tear on the home as a whole, right? Whereas with most Pokemon product, as long as the IP is relevant, I can sit on that product in an area that is going to make sure that it is secure and it's well maintained. And I'm just going to watch the value, presumably go up if we're talking sealed product because it's deflationary, right? And so you kind of have certain ups and downs with each. And then you also have to ask yourself, kind of what is your risk tolerance compared to the reward and what you're willing to kind of put into it, because certain ventures can end up being much more expensive as investing, and then of course you have to take also into consideration Pokemon and the way in which it's able to be liquidity wise, how easy it's to be offloaded compared to like a stock or an index, right? Because that's another thing, is that stocks and indexes are significantly easier to sell when you're on market platforms, but there's also its own risk that comes with that, and tax implications and other things. So long story short, there's just so many other factors that you have to kind of take into consideration when it comes to all these opportunities for investing. It's not black and white.
No, I think like some of the fatigue too, because I know a lot of people I've talked to, like, man, Alex, like I watch some of your videos, but I really stopped watching all of Pokemon YouTube right now. It's just too cringe. And I get it, like, because it even gets like tiring for us, because here's the thing, right? To everyone brand new to the hobby, this is all new. And so they're trying to figure out like who's telling the truth, who's not. Like they're probably not doing a lot of research on their own because nobody researches on their own. They just like try to find people they resonate with and listen to. And so it's like for people like me and Eli, guys, I've been through so many of these cycles. Like, why do you think we have hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in this hobby? Why do you think we've been so successful in the hobby overall? So many different years, over up markets, down markets, flat markets, everything in between, is because we've seen this happen a million times. And so it's like, it's not as, I guess, like emotional. It's not as crazy. Every, spike up, every reprint down, it's not as like a big of a deal or as exciting anymore, because it's like, after you've seen it a million times, it's just like, you already know what's going to happen. Right. And I get it. You could always get to some point in the future where, everything collapses, economy collapses. That's great. If the whole world collapses, it's some Armageddon scenario, guess what? Your stock market isn't going to matter anyway. Your house isn't going to matter. What's going to matter? If you've got some place to kind of hunker down, you got some ammunition, you got some food and clean water, and you have, that's what's going to matter, right? Not where you have your money. And so as long as life remains somewhat similar and everything kind of keeps marching along, things are likely going to continue to do the same exact thing they always have. And, 2, 3, 4 years from now, like Eli said, most people are not going to be here. And so what happens is people like me and him, we're still here. And so we see all the new crop of people come in. They're worried about all the same exact stuff, using all the same arguments. And we're going to be saying, guys, this is now our 4th time seeing this. Like, we're trying to tell you, no one will believe it. They'll gravitate to some new person that will be speaking to them because, they're angry, and everyone's get around, be angry and negative together. And, by the time all the appreciation comes around in another 2, 3 years, they'll all be gone. They'll miss out. And, it's just kind of the constant cycle of how, some people just never make money in the hobby and just never are successful with it.
Yeah, no, 100%. Also as well, this is 2014. So I don't know where 2015 kind of leaves us, but, so top media franchises, Pokemon is at the top with an estimated 147 billion. Then second place is Hello Kitty at 89 billion. So Pokemon is like so far ahead. I mean, heck, if you look at the MCU, I mean, don't get me wrong, MCU is definitely kind of taking a little bit of a dive, but it's at 35 billion and Harry Potter's at 32 billion. So just take that into consideration. I'd be interested to see where Lord of the Rings are, but you've got certain franchises that we see, especially in American culture, as being extremely prevalent. And then you go compare it to obviously some of these other, brands, and you say to yourself, wow, like this is worth so much more money. Like Mickey Mouse and Friends is literally worth 74 billion. So if you just take the IPs of Mickey Mouse, right, Disney affiliated product, and the MCU, which they also own, Pokemon's worth more than that, right? Star Wars is another 70 billion. So like it's so crazy just to think about how strong of an IP Pokemon is in comparison.
Yep.
All right. You ready for questions?
Let's do it, dude. I'm sure there'll be some good ones. I know we have some trolls in the chat today.
Yeah. All right. I'm scrolling up to the top. We'll take a look and see what we have. Oh wait, no. We already answered that question earlier.
Hey, don't be skipping questions. Everyone's question is important. Everybody is a
We already
precious little
answered that
snowflake.
question. Have you seen some people? They're saying demand instead of question. Yeah.
No, what is it? What's the demand?
You like take off the hat.
Oh man, that's a Jeeth, man.
That's crazy.
He's
I'll
a
take
homie.
off
He's
the
good.
hat next stream, not this one, sadly. Do you think this is basically the bottom for prismatic singles? What with the Costco bundles, etc. Only product we know is still coming is Fear Collections. Not a lot of packs in that.
I mean, it's definitely the bottom for now. Like, you know, there's no way of knowing when the next restock reprint's coming. But as of right now, I think the Costco product is making its way throughout the market. I think we've seen the bottom for the time being. I think the ETBs are going to continue to rise till they find their new kind of level they're going to sit at. I think the singles are probably going to stabilize here soon. Again, the bottom is a very relative term. It could be the bottom for the next 3 months, but for the next 2 years, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, we obviously don't have a crystal ball here, but if we're just talking about it relative, it's about 5 months old. Prismatic is, and we're just talking about when it was first released, not including the fact that it came out in waves, and these waves were being put out for product up until about last month. So you could argue some product is literally just a little bit over a month old for Prismatic. So the window for reprints, there's still quite a bit of time. And then you also take into consideration that, like we said before, Pokemon specifically likes to print specialty sets more than regular ETB or booster box sets. So there's a high probability that in the long term, for like the lifespan of where this set is currently in rotation, there's going to be at least another reprint in the next 6 months to a year. We have no clue, obviously, what effects are going to be played into this reprint and how much it's going to cause prices to correct or what the strength of the market is going to be relative. But I will say, obviously, the thing that will always be affected the most is going to be the singles compared to the sealed, because the sealed is deflationary. So I would agree with what Alex is saying. Right now, it definitely feels like we're starting to hit a bottom for what we have currently, but obviously there's no way of knowing until it kind of happens on if more supply, more than likely, is to come out, what that will cause prices to be at.
I know we're about to see a lot more anger come from a lot of videos because it's looking like Prismatic is going to hit 110 to 120 in this next week in ETB again. And so a lot of the people wishing it was going to hit MSRP, they're upset.
Yeah, it's a strong set, man. Eli, any word on allocations for Riftbound League of Legends? No, I haven't. I haven't heard it. I mean, right now we're just Edge of Eternity. For Magic the Gathering. As far as the trading card game itself, obviously that's its own thing. I haven't heard any sort of information about that. Do you know what he's talking about, by the way, Alex?
Yeah, I actually put in for it. So originally they were going to allow physical location owners, card distribution accounts to order this, and I had orders in for it. And then my rep notified me they're going to keep it to just physical stores. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to.
That sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been a big thing. A lot of people in the program have kind of been talking about it. I mean, obviously it's League of Legends.
I put in for a good amount of it. I put in for because even my rep was pretty, he thinks it's going to do well. So I'm just like,
we've had a couple of people ask about it in the shop. I mean, people are like, you gonna get Riftbound? And I was like, maybe.
Dude, in my opinion, in this day and age, in this new TCG day and age, I think you'd be better off buying every single new set, alpha set, original set of every new TCG. And I think you'll probably come out ahead than you would behind. Some won't take off, but the ones that do are going to go insane. Like, dude, when I bought One Piece boxes for $100 and they went to $1,000 within the first year, the Romance Dawn Blue Bottoms, I mean, it's like that makes up for any other loss you could see on any new TCG. Like, you could buy MetaZoo, you could buy freaking anything that comes out, just buy the first set and you're probably going to be all right because people always want that first. And there's always like a ton of hype when it's new TCG comes out. And again, I'm not saying it's like a long-term hold, never sell. I think you could probably do very well catching a big spike on a lot of the new TCG sets, just getting in off the rip.
Yeah. What's the next big inflection point? 30th anniversary. What kind of set do you think would cause people to go bananas?
Guys, I'm sorry. I'm not an anniversary guy. I go off data. Generations was not a huge success. Celebrations was not a huge success. I don't think 30th anniversary is going to be this gigantic, massive thing everyone thinks it is. I mean, I think it'll be all right, but I'm not like crossing my fingers hoping the 30th anniversary is going to like send us into a big giant bull run. It's just anniversary sets have never been that. In fact, most people like consider Evolutions like the true anniversary set, and they overlook Generations as how bad it was. Like it's strange, man.
Yeah, Celebrations was a set that was super duper hyped up when it first came out, and like Celebrations from a hype perspective was like our destined rivals. But when the set actually came out, like after the fact, prices fell super flat for the longest time because Celebrations as a set was just so not fun to open. Like you would literally open a handful of ETBs and you would get 90% of the cards, and then you could just go buy the rest of the cards for like sub $20, unless you of course didn't pull the Charizard, which even then the Charizard was relatively cheap, comparable to what you'd usually get Charizards for. So it was a set that was super easy to collect and you didn't have to open a ton of. And so because of that, there just wasn't a huge amount of demand from just an opener perspective. So it's literally just now starting to finally pick up some steam. I mean, the ETBs were sitting at $80 for the longest time. They're finally moving. I mean, same thing goes. We talked about it with the ultra premium collections. I mean, they were sitting at 400 forever, and they're now just finally starting to move 4 years later.
So it's one of the just bad decisions I made. I sold off a portion of them back when they did hit 400s. I should have just sold them all back then and moved the money into something else. Like it's been dead money for 3 years now.
Yeah. So I guess with all this to say, we don't know what the 30th anniversary is going to look like. Obviously, we'll see what it ends up coming when it comes out. But I guess at least how I'm looking at it currently is sure there could be some like demand that will come back into the market because of it. But I mean, Crown Zenith was a super duper hyped up set, and I would say is light years ahead in terms of the like card arts and what you're able to pull compared to Celebrations. And that set fell flat because the market was not that strong. So ultimately it just is going to come down to the strength of the market.
Yes, sir.
From today forward, would you rather have 1 Sun and Moon base box or 6 prismatic regular ETBs?
6 prismatic.
Yeah, I mean, Sun and Moon base, it's a base set, and it's not like a Scarlet and Violet base set, which obviously has SIRs and IRs. Like Sun and Moon base is vanilla.
And guys, I want to say this. Like, I don't know. I say this all the time, but guys, I do not care what happens in the next 2 years. I don't care. I don't care if people can, find some kind of deal or we get a big reprint, it drops prismatic. You say, Alex, haha, you were wrong. It's at, $85 now. I don't care. If you do not own prismatic ETBs in 5 years, you're going to be unhappy. I'm just going to tell you, you're going to be extremely unhappy you don't own them. So if you want to play the game and try to wait and time market and all this stuff, do that. And that's fine. You can say, Alex, I got in a better price than you. I won. Good. I'm actually happy for you genuinely. But if you play that game too long and you never get them, you're going to be extremely unhappy you don't have those in 5 years.
Am I crazy to think every SV era booster box will be $1,000 or close 10 years from now? I say that because Steam Siege is worse than any SV set, and it's $1,000 in 9 years.
It's hard to tell, man, because like there's some bad Sun and Moon sets that are still in the, I guess, mid lower hundreds. And even Sword and Shield's it has some that just won't move past that 200 range. No, I think we may have sets over 1,000. I think we'll definitely will, but no, I don't think every set.
I don't know. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball here, but I definitely think that it's highly likely they'll at least get close to it. My only, I guess, reasoning behind that is inflation in 2015 compared to 2025 has taken such a huge jump. And I can only imagine how bad inflation is going to be by 2035.
Ooh, that's the other thing. It's just like adding inflation in, like we're not doing like a cost adjusted returns here. Like we're not doing like a CAGR, right? We're just saying like straight price. Maybe they are all $1,000 and like,
Yeah.
maybe houses all cost $1 million and cars are all 100 grand. I don't know. Like in that
Yeah.
case, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Like six figures is like the new like 60K. Like
I
six
don't know if
figures.
I just don't agree with that, dude.
You don't think six figures
No,
takes you as far as it did 10 years ago?
I see the world a lot different than a lot of the people online see it, dude.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think six figures takes you as far as it did 10 years ago?
Well, obviously not like as far as 10 years ago, but like compared here's one thing that no one talks about, right? People have become accustomed to a bunch of like things they consider necessities that nobody had 10 years ago, right? No one had streaming services. A lot of people didn't even have cable. They would still have just regular channels, okay? No one had cell phones. They had landlines, okay? Nobody like so many things that we like have to have today. Nobody had back then. People go shopping insanely more than they do now, buying new shoes, buying new clothes, right? A lot of people didn't go get their nails done and hair done for the ladies all the freaking time like people do now. I think people's lifestyles have just crept up so insanely high that it feels like you have less money when in fact, if you lived with the bare necessities a lot of people lived with back then, I think we're definitely still worse because obviously other things have crept up more, like, cars and homes and things. But I don't think it's as crazy as people make it. It's definitely worse, but not that much worse. People nowadays live with so much excess than they did back then.
I mean, here's what I'll say. Yes, quality of life, of course, has gotten better because of technology and access to certain things. And obviously, as technology advances, the luxuries that were, more within wealthier households become more available to middle class and lower households, right? Like TV, obviously, airfare, and other such luxuries that are now like an everyday thing that anyone can have access to for a significantly more affordable price compared to how much it was back then. But I would say the biggest issue that I have is if you look at the price of homes and the tracking of wages in comparison,
Yeah.
the amount of money that you're having to put down comparable to what your household income is nowadays compared to back then is so significant. And I can't remember the exact numbers, so don't quote me on this, but I think it was on average, it took about 2 years for someone back in the 70s or 80s to have enough money for a down payment on a home and to qualify. Whereas with now, I think it's somewhere in the range of like 9 years or 8 to 9 years,
Yeah.
comparably. So
Yeah.
it's like you're talking about a 5 times difference
For
in
sure.
what
Yeah.
is affordable with just, cost of living. So
I think parts of life have definitely gotten a lot worse, but it's like, dude, back then, like no one went out to eat all the time. Nobody got fast food. Nobody went out and got coffees, right? This was all done at home, right? Like you didn't like take your kids to like all these different water parks and like Dave and Buster's. No, you said go play outside, or here, I'll go get my glove and bat and we can go, throw the ball in the backyard. I just think people have created these lifestyles that take so much money to feed. Whereas like I don't get me wrong, it's definitely harder, but I definitely think you can make your life a lot easier if people stop living so far above their means.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. Lifestyle creep is obviously a thing, but I don't know. I guess it's just hard for me to say just based on when we're talking about median household income in comparison. Because costs of groceries are just so much more expensive nowadays.
I don't know, dude. Like, dude, you can go literally get freaking packs of chicken breast and white rice and freaking. You can eat very, very cheap still and very healthy.
I mean, but if you live in
vegetables.
California, you're paying like 20, like you're paying so. I was talking to my cousin the other day, right, when I was visiting, and he lives in like California, and he was telling me that they were paying like 12 to $15 for a dozen of eggs, depending upon where you were. and like $6 for gas. Like that's insane. And I understand it's California, like it's not the Midwest, like where you live, where things are going to be significantly cheaper.
They're not that much cheaper, but like here, let me like just like break. I always like to break stuff down for people. It's just like, well, how many eggs do you eat a meal? Say 3, maybe. I mean, if you're working out, 4 or 5 eggs, like, okay, so you're paying like maybe $2 or $3 a meal. Maybe get a loaf of bread. You're eating eggs and bread. Maybe get like some ham or something. Like, what is it really costing you? $3, $4 a meal? Is that a lot?
I mean, I don't think everyone's gonna have eggs every day, though.
But no, but like, But I'm just trying to break it down. Like, you know, like, oh, pizzas are so expensive. Like, what's a pizza cost? Like $10 or $12. 2 people can eat it usually. So $5, $6 each a meal. Like,
yeah, but you just said the difference between no one's making pizza though. Like, there's a difference.
But anything, I just, dude, I don't know, man. I think it gets blown out of proportion a little bit. It's again, I'm admitting it's definitely harder. I just think things get a little blown out of proportion when you really break it down. It's just like, I don't know. I mean, dude, you're like, I mean, I guess you're a little younger, but it's like, dude, when I started working, minimum wage was like $6.25. Like now minimum wage, a lot of places is $15. And so it's already went up like, you know, 1.5 times. And so I feel like, I mean, yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff's went up about 1.5 times. Like maybe some stuff's went up a little more since I was in high school, but I mean, I don't know, dude. I just don't think it's as outlandish as some people are making it, is all I'm saying.
So here, I have a chart. I'll pull it up and we'll talk about this briefly. But so we'll go back just to 1990, right? So roughly about 35 years ago. Average median household income, right? So just so everyone understands, that doesn't mean the average individual income. So median household income could be 2 individuals, right? In 1990, it was $63,830. This is by fredstoutland.org, which is a very popular website used to track these statistics. As of 2023, that number is $80,610. So in other words, the average household income since then has gone up about $17,000, which is roughly around 25%. So, and that's over 35 years. If we look and compare that to the price of homes back in 1990, the price of homes was sitting at $149,000 was the average. Now the current average is $510,000. You had a 25% increase in wages, and you had over a 300% increase or 200% increase.
I definitely said cars and homes are definitely outrageous, dude. But it's just like, put it this way: when I was in high school, because I got out of high school in 2008, gas was actually more expensive than it is right now.
What?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's interesting, man.
At least where I'm at, like gas back then was like in the mid $3, like in the Midwest, and like now it's in like the lower, like sometimes it's under $3. And so like dude, because you gotta remember after, you know, before I would say before like the, you know, I guess crash and everything was like everything was ramping up, everything was getting expensive.
I don't know. That's hard. I mean, I feel like this is starting to get anecdotal now, because like,
yeah, I don't know. Like I said,
because in Oregon, I could buy gas. Well, I didn't buy gas because I was too young, but you could buy gas into the low $2, and now it's pushing $4 to $5. Like, so it's hard to say because, like, you know, like I said before, we're getting anecdotal here.
Yeah, dude.
So,
I don't know. Like I said, it's definitely a little harder, but I just think people blow it out of proportion is all I'm saying. I think you can definitely get by with a lot less than what the average American's lifestyle is all I mean. That's it.
I think the hardest part about it though is owning a home out of consideration, which is at an all-time, you know, level of difficulty. Now more than ever, people are renting with roommates. And that's the biggest thing. Is previous to that, people were able to go out of college and go buy a home or be able to afford to rent on their own. Whereas now most people aren't able to do that. And those who do choose to do that are then putting on average 70 to 60% of their paycheck towards their living expenses, just baseline cost of living on a home plus whatever utilities you're paying. So take luxuries out of it, right? The people that have more expendable income, that are a part of the middle class, that obviously are making around that $80,000 household income, which is once again 2 individuals, you kind of need to have a second person to be able to do that. So unless you're with a spouse, it's usually a roommate, which is very much more prevalent culturally now than it was previously. And I think that's the biggest problem that, comes with all of this. So, I mean, at least I know for myself, I wouldn't be able to afford where I'm renting currently if it weren't for the fact that my wife and I live together. And all of my buddies that I grew up with that are older than me, they all grew up, renting out a place with their brother, their siblings, their, friends. Like, so you can't, like, getting a single place on your own, like starting out, at least in the Arizona area, right, which is significantly cheaper than California. Like, if you can, you're lucky if you can find a single bedroom apartment for like 1,500 that's not in a ghetto area, let alone a single home for less than 2,000. So I don't know, but we've been going on for a while. Obviously we'll move on because we don't want to get people kind of sick of hearing about this topic. Have you guys heard about Box Toppers is coming back for the classic set after SV 10.5? Do you know what he means by classic set?
No, you know me. I'm never up on the other rumors. I don't know.
I'm so sorry. I wish I knew.
I don't even know what the classic set is. So
I know the classic collection is on a massive discount right now at Costco, if I'm correct. I don't know if you've heard about that.
True. Yes. It's actually down to a price point that isn't that bad. Finally.
Yeah. Right.
Like 2/3 of what it used to be. Now I'm finally actually like looking at it like, oh, maybe that's not that bad.
Yeah. Alex says, demand, this isn't a question, demand, Alex, say, tell me on the graph where the reprints hurt you.
Dude, it's so true though. I feel like some people in the hobby, they must have got like stuck in like maybe one of the big reprints back in 2022. And so now every time they hear reprints, it's almost like shell shock. They're like, no, not a reprint. It's like they're freaking out, like they're gonna lose all their money. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, no, 100%. So funny. All right. Next question. Oh my gosh, dude. We've got a lot of people in the chat.
It's all right, man.
Sorry. I like scroll down and scrolling back up takes a while. Wow. There's a lot of conversation going on right now.
Yeah, I told you there's a lot of trolling going on back and forth.
Yeah. People are definitely going back and forth with each other in the chat. All right. Bear with me 2 seconds. Is Hidden Fate still undervalued? It has the most unique promos and a shiny Zard Umbreon.
Agent Crypto has been like on Hidden Fates for like, I don't even know, over a year now. So like, I'm happy Hidden Fates finally went to the moon. So it's funny. It's funny because I use Prismatic. Again, nobody ever wants to like, whenever you give them a data point that doesn't match like the narrative, they hate it. Hidden Fates is a perfect data point. Hidden Fates mimics Prismatic so hard. Like, came out of the gate way too expensive, way too hard to find. Everyone's upset. Had umpteenth reprints. It's literally less than 6 years old. It's over $400 in ETB. Meaning, if you would have bought when it was $100, $120, when like Prismatic, when it's all overpriced and everyone's upset, you would have like 4x your money. You would have made 300% on your money in a matter of a little over 5 years. And Hidden Fate's the perfect example of that. So like, is it still undervalued at over 400? I think it's probably properly valued finally. Agent Crypto.
Yeah, I don't think it's undervalued at all. I think it's where it should be comparable to how long. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, I don't think it's overvalued. So, I mean, I guess, man, I hate investing in singles. You could argue some of the singles are undervalued, right? I don't know.
So I don't invest in singles, but yeah, I definitely
like. Let me ask you this, because there's been a lot of the singles that have been popping off. Like Umbreon is going for over 200. Cynthia is going for 168, right? So those two cards in particular have popped off. But like the Mewtwo, right? The Mewtwo right now is sitting at $65, lowest listed, with a gold star seller. And if you look at what it's done in the past year, it was at its lowest point selling for about $50. So going from 50 to 68, like what is that, like a 30% increase? That's not that crazy. Like,
no.
but like I said, I don't usually invest in singles. I think they're a lot more speculative, but comparing it to some of the other cards like the Umbreon, which was going for significantly less, it's gone up over $100. So it's like at a 70% return on investment, right? Because it was
That's
at
good.
150 at some point. Like
Hidden Fates has a massive run up. So Jesse James had a huge run.
yeah, Cynthia and her Garchomp
Yes.
card that went for at lowest 82. It looks like now going for lowest listed 168.
Yeah,
So
and I'm sure
that's an
that's
over
partly because
100%
of
return.
that's got to be because of Destin.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean the hype for that makes sense. I mean it's interesting. There's certain cards that I feel like you've seen a huge run up on, like the Reshiram GX obviously has gone up. Black and white set, right? Makes sense.
Yep.
But there are certain cards like the Mewtwo where you look at it and you're like, really? Like the Mewtwo is only going for that much? Because I mean, I'm not talking about some like one fluke listing that's going for like $65.
Right.
Like
Right.
you've got multiple other listings that are, 67, 68, 68, 68, 69. Like you can pretty easily get it for sub $70.
Yeah.
So, not a singles guy, but I don't hate it. But not going the sealed route. Do you guys think we're at the top of the current market cycle and could start to see large decreases in demand going into the new era with possible improvements to supply?
Yeah, I think that's a relatively decent take. Going into the new era, I could definitely see. Like I said, I think the next era will probably see a set hit MSRP on a booster box at release again, and I think things will slow down. But again, I don't think that means anything for the previous sets. But yeah, I agree.
Here, I'm gonna have you take the next question. I'm getting an important call. Give me 2 seconds.
Oh, I thought I was going to be something ridiculous.
No, one of my employees is calling me, which means it's probably important. So bear with me 2 seconds. All right, next question. I'll have you read it out loud.
One Surging Sparks booster box, one Prismatic SPC. Is it a good trade? I have to give the Surging Sparks booster box. No. No, I wouldn't do that. The SPC, I believe, is under $200. Surging Sparks booster boxes ran back up to like $245. Unless they're going to throw in a sweetener with it to up the value or give you some cash on top. That's not a good one right now, if you'd ask me. Yeah, guys, look, I know it's a really unpopular take. I know I got blown up in chat with the whole talking about cost of living and oh, sorry, Eli's back. But yeah, I mean, I definitely get it. Things are definitely harder, but there's definitely a lot of ways to make it a little easier on yourselves. If you just watch your dollars and cents a little closer is all I was trying to say.
Are you responding to this question or something else?
No, I responded to that. That's an obvious one. Like Surging Sparks booster box is like what, $50 more. So they got to throw in a sweetener or a cash or something to make that worth it.
So then what are we talking about? Sorry.
Oh, I was just trying to fill the time while you were on the phone. That's all. Just talking about the whole cost of living debate stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, like consumer debt's at an all-time high because people are spending so much money on like, things that are luxuries, 100%. There's definitely a lot more access to that. I mean, if you just look at late to early 2000s, heck, I remember there's a commercial for Burger King that like went viral a while ago because Burger King was one of the first places to start accepting credit cards. And they were like interviewing people about it, and people were saying how crazy it was that like who could ever need a credit card for like that. And now Klarna, like you can finance a Costco hot dog, and you're just like, dude, it's so wild to think about like how much culturally things have shifted when it comes to like consumer debt, right? I mean, you probably know who Caleb Hammer is, right?
Right.
Yeah, like his whole channel, like man, you watch some of the stuff that some of these individuals are putting themselves into positions in, and you're just like, wow, this is crazy. But
well, it's one thing I really agree with Dave Ramsey on. It's just like the whole credit card thing. It's just like for people that can handle it, it seems like nonsense. The issue is like a lot of people can't handle it. And that whole idea that like when you swipe plastic, it isn't the same as like pain sensors when you have to pay cash, right? And so it's like, I think it does give people a lot of issues. Like people like me or you or anyone out there that handles credit cards responsibly, you know, that stuff seems like nonsense, and that's fine. Like there's no one advice for everybody, but I think that advice of like, if you have an issue with credit cards, you start using cash. I think it would really benefit a lot of people, not get in over their heads, you know, just buying stuff, because you'll forget what you bought. You don't check your statement that much. And all of a sudden the bill gets there. It's too much. Oh, I'll pay it off next month. I'll just make a minimum payment this month. It compounds. You're paying interest. It leads to so many factors if you don't pay it off every month and you can't handle your spending.
Yeah, I think Dan Ramsey, generally speaking, can give good advice when it comes to helping people eliminate debt. I think the part where I start to feel like he gets out of touch sometimes is when he gives takes to people on like, like, oh, you need to cut down on your expenses. Well, you've got a new $20,000 car. You should sell that and go pick up $1,000 beater and you can just run on that.
Yeah, there's
And
no
I'm just
$1,000
like,
cars anymore.
dude, $1,000 cars aren't a thing. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about, right? Like, I've heard him give like I literally heard a video like that 3 days ago where I was
Yeah.
like, this is such an out of touch take, right? And
Right.
as someone who's literally like a huge penny pincher and is always trying to save as much money as possible, it's one of these things where for me, as much as I hate to say it, like there are instances in which I've said to myself, okay, I have this car that I bought for like $10,000. It's ran itself really well for the past 3 years. But realistically speaking, I'm at a point right now where I'm almost going to put more into the car than what I have purchased it for.
Yes.
Versus if I had gone and bought a new car, which, I bought for like 25, 26,000. And it's going to last me another, decade, hopefully, with, of course, general maintenance, as long as you keep, care of it. And it's going to be my two favorites, Toyota or Honda, because those ones are known for lasting. I'd much rather do that than like try and take a chance. Because like my wife had a Hyundai that she was running on forever. And once it got to the point of where we had to ask ourselves the question, okay, should we either sell it for 3,000 or should we fix it for 2,500? You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't make sense. And I've had multiple people in my life that have went and tried going the beater route, like Dave Ramsey talks about, and they've like vetted the vehicle and it'll only last them a year. And then if they want to replace it, it's the same price of what they bought it for a year ago. And so you feel like you end up getting screwed out of the deal, right?
I think some of the stuff he just says to like stay on brand, like, you know, the whole like what it was, I think it was Graham Stephan, maybe like
$1 billion with
yeah,
0%
it's like, well,
interest.
there's
Yeah,
risk, there's literally risk-free money markets you can make 3% in, and like you can make 2% off that 1% you're paying. It's like stuff like that's kind of ridiculous, but it's like, yeah, a lot of the stuff makes a lot of sense, and it's just like, again, it's just hard truths that people just don't want to admit to themselves a lot of the time, you know.
Yeah, 100%. Alex, if ETBs can't go down under $100, why you have case in case of Paradox to show, but not case in case of Prismatic to show? You're 100% bullish on your call?
I mean, you may go get some cases. I got cases. Should I go get my cases?
What is he talking about specifically?
I don't know. I think he says I don't have cases of Prismatic ETBs. I kept Prismatic ETB cases off the release. I bought more when they went down to 120 on TCG. My card shop actually had a little better deal for me, so I got them under 120. And I haven't bought more yet because the cases never dropped. Right, the ETBs went down. The actual cases stayed above 1,200 on TCG and market. There are some at auction right now on eBay you could probably buy some deals on. But yeah, I mean, if they continue to drop and they go down another 10, 20%, I'll buy more. Like I invest, right? I don't try to play the market. I don't day trade. I don't look for how I can make money. I run a business. I have an income. I'm not trying to make income on my investments. I'm trying to grow long term. And so just like I do in the stock market, if I have a position that drops 10, 15, 20%, I buy more. I don't panic sell. And so same thing with these. I'd buy more, hold them, and cost basis would be whatever it would be. And in 3, 4, 5 years, I'll be just fine. I'm not going to worry about if I got the absolute bottom dollar like some people do. And the reality is most people that quote unquote wait for the bottom dollar, wait for MSRP, even if it ended up getting to that price point they set for themselves, they usually never buy, or they only buy a small amount because they're still fearful that maybe this time it won't go up. Maybe this time it'll keep going down, whatever. And you end up losing in the long run. Look, the reason me and Eli have been successful in this hobby is because we put our money where our mouth is. We stay for the long term. We operate on data, not on feelings, and it works over time.
I mean, my thing is I get criticism regardless.
Yeah.
Either I'll say this is a good call, and if I don't have money in on it, people will say, well, obviously you're just, you're not telling the truth because you're not invested in it. And then if I am invested in something and I say that it's a good investment, then people say I'm shilling the product, trying to pump it. So I don't know. You can't win. When the market does hit its inevitable downturn, do you think Sword and Shield and SV top chasing to PST10 will correct more than 30%-ish?
Well, many already have. Like,
yeah, that's what I was about to say.
I would say no. Like, if you think it, like 151 Charizard, it's already corrected past 30%. Do I think it's going to correct 30% more? Absolutely not. Do I think Bubble Mew is going to correct 30% more? Absolutely not. Like, I think we've seen a lot of the correction, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm going to pull it up right now.
But I do want to respond a little more to that last question too. All the focus is on Prismatic, but like, guys, when I was preaching Paldea Evolved, remember when the reprints, restocks came on Paldea and Obsidian Flames at 130 and nobody wanted to buy and everyone thinks it was going to crash back to $90 because they had, visions of Chilling Reign and Fusion Strike. I bought more Paldea. I was buying Paldea Evolved boxes in collection buyouts all the way up to I was paying like $11.50 a case. And so I bought Paldea when it was $80 a booster box. I bought it all the way up to $11.50 a case. And so, yes, if you're asking me, do I believe in things to buy them over MSRP? Absolutely.
Yeah, one thing I will say is just looking at some of the histories and of sales. You had the Moonbryon selling for around $3,000 back in January. And you've got like some sales that are showing it selling for right around 2,400. What's that from a percentage perspective? That's about a 20% dip.
Yeah.
It's not, I know you wanted 30%, but like that's an adjustment for like a single that high demand. So there's definitely been some form of corrections.
Well, the 10's corrected huge. Like the 10 Charizard was selling for over $1,000 and it corrected all the way under 700. So that was more than 30% on the Charizard.
I think another one to probably look at. I think there was a correction, if I'm correct, with the Gengar.
I mean, the Pikachu, Surging Sparks Pikachu got crushed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not seeing
the Sword and Shield. So Sword and Shield, dude, I made a video maybe like a month ago now, where I said, I think all the alt arts right now, all the top alt arts are buys. And a lot of them since that video are already up like 10 to 15%. And yeah, man, I think a lot of the alt arts are definitely good times to pick them up.
Yeah.
Not all of them, not all like the deep ones, but like Umbreon VMAX, Lugia V, Garatina V, Gengar VMAX, like the top tier ones.
Espeon's a good one to look at too. That was selling at 660 back in January, and it's now selling for last sold 525. So there's another. That one's that's about a 30% retrace. Yeah. So roughly. So yeah, definitely. I mean, it's case by case on the card, but. Everyone's saying the top is in, but what's the data supporting on this? Only item is dipping, has gotten massive supply, big correction, feels like wishful thinking. Well, I think I mentioned this. I mean, this was kind of what we segued into when we first started talking in today's video. Like I said before, the market itself right now, you're starting to see some semblance of weakness in the overall sentiment of the market. But if we're just looking at general pricing, Prismatic ETBs and the surprise boxes are correcting because of more supply. Other than that, you're kind of seeing a flatlining of Journey and Destined. And then outside of that, the rest of the market feels pretty much stable. So it's not necessarily to say that like everything's crashing, right? But it's also to say that it definitely feels like there's been a slowdown, whereas everything was going hyperbolic. It felt like every single week and prices were just on the rise and going to continue to rise. So I don't think it's as bad as where we are currently, but you're definitely starting to show some slowdown. And obviously we don't know if that just means we're kind of cooling off before another leg up, or if we're just going to see it kind of topping out and then things are finally going to come down at some point based off of what's going to happen with the upcoming sets and the demand for the rest of the hobby in the next year or two.
Yeah, Brett, and I can't speak for what like other people are saying where the top is in, all that BS, but all I'm saying is I think we're finally at the point where like we've kind of reached the market prices that things are going to see for like the time being. And I think some of the newer sets might finally start, the demand doesn't seem as crazy strong as like Prismatic, Journey Together, you know, even like before Destined Rivals. It seems like things are just like kind of like leveling out. So I in no way, shape, or form see a crash or a big correction. I just think like things are going to level out. A lot of the stuff already released will probably stay similar to what it is unless one of the sets or two of the sets get reprints. And then like the newer sets coming, we'll probably see like lower, you know, sales, like, you know, $200 a box, 180s a box, and maybe a 2-3 sets from now we see 160 a box. Like that's all I'm saying, man. So nothing crazy is what I guess what we're getting at.
All right, we'll do 2 more questions and we'll get on out of here. With the mass printing of Sword and Shield, do you think the top sets will follow Sun and Moon, meeting 1,000 to 2,500 for trainer gallery sets?
Yep. I think Evolving Skies is going to be team up. I think Fusion Strike will be Cosmic. And I think, you know, well, I guess that's not a trainer gallery set, but yeah, I mean, I think things like Chilling Reign, Lost Origin
would be
Brilliant Stars, like those are going to be your Unbrokens and your Unifieds and things like that. Like, absolutely.
I mean, you see a lot of parallels.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy to notice. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love Evolving so much. I mean, the writing is on the wall.
Yeah.
All right, last question. What is the most accurate way to measure demand in the Pokemon market? Also, any way to determine how much product is being printed for each set, trying to visualize the supply and the demand. Do you want me to answer this one?
I'm trying to like take it in. What is the most accurate way to measure demand? Also, any way to determine how much product is being printed? Well, there's no way to determine how much product. No one really has that information except like Pokemon. And then to measure demand, yeah, I mean, you can measure demand by sales volume and you know, the price movement on sets. Like, you know, so if, you know, sales volume is increasing or decreasing, the price is increasing or decreasing, you can definitely measure demand.
Yeah, one of the most helpful things that we've been able to get access to recently on TCG Player is their sales data metrics for the past year. So if you literally go to TCG Player, it'll tell you on their chart what the average daily sales volume is based on time, and you can actually see that on a graph, and it'll break it down for you. So if you want to
also how many are on the market. So like if you see like influxes of supply on the market or decreases of supply on the market, that's another factor.
Yeah. So if I literally want to go to Destined Rivals right now, right, and I want to talk about the week of release, I can see from May 28th till the 30th that 731 items were sold, right? So that's, you know, that's an insane amount. And if I go back to Journey Together and I look and I say to myself, okay, when Journey Together came out, week release, 407 items sold. So that tells us, just based on the demand metrics on TCG Player, that almost double the amount of booster boxes were sold for Destined Rivals on the week of release compared to Journey. And Destin was selling for $50 to $60 above what Journey was on its release date. So that's something that is a really helpful way to look at the overall demand. As far as supply determining, it's really difficult for like an everyday individual to be able to see these things past the point of like just taking the word of others on like social media that have access to the information. Because at least for myself, right, I have access to distribution. I'm one of the larger suppliers when it comes to product. And so it's pretty easy for me to kind of get information from my distributors and the higher ups within the distributors that I have connections with, and getting an idea of what their kind of allocation numbers are looking like compared to other sets. And then taking that a step further, obviously cross-referencing it with other stores I have connections with, and kind of getting an idea of what their numbers look like. And then other content creators, obviously Danny Phantom, every single, new set release always reveals the information of what his numbers look like comparatively. And other, people like Pokémon will also compare that information. So just trying to pull up as much data as you can in cross-referencing allocation numbers. That's the best way that I can personally say that you can kind of determine how things are looking, but it's not, it's not always going to be 100% like Alex was saying, because Pokemon's not just disclosing that information willy-nilly. We're just going off of numbers from what we've kind of received.
Yeah, no, hey, Johnny Silverhand in chat, feel free to reach out to me, dude. Nostalgianomics@gmail.com. I know you call me a clown and stuff in chat, but I'll be happy to write you a free meal plan, man. I do for people all the time when I used to work out and train fighting. I'll write you a full meal plan that is very affordable and very healthy. I actually just looked up some stuff. Nationwide, not Midwest, nationwide cost of chicken breast, $4.22 a pound. That's the average. $4.22 a pound. Average pound of rice, about $1. You can get some mixed vegetables very cheaply. You can eat that for dinner every single night for very cheap, less than $5 a meal for a nice, well-balanced, healthy meal. I mean, what, tuna fish in a can? That's pretty freaking cheap. You can eat that. There's plenty of fruits. Bananas are a very cheap fruit. Tons of fruits out there that are very cheap to eat. I can go down the list. I'll write you a full meal plan for 3 meals, 4 meals a day, whatever you eat for all 7 days of the week. And I promise you I will fit it in any budget that you have. So you're going to cut out your Starbucks. You have to cut out your fast food. You won't be able to go out to eat, but I will definitely get you a well-balanced, healthy meal plan for very cheap.
And at that, I think that was our last question of the day, guys. But anything you want to say before we get out of here, good sir?
That's all I got, man. That's all I got.
People are going to start signing up for your meal plan, Alex. All right, brother. I think we had another good stream. Want to thank everyone so much for stopping by. Once again, make sure you leave the like, comment down below, subscribe. Really helps the YouTube channel out. Check out Alex's meal plan and his nutrition program that he's going to start offering. Link will be down in the description below. I'll probably get an affiliation with that, 10% off. So make sure to check that out when he drops that on his socials. But all right, guys, everyone have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. I will see you all next week. Peace.